Hello everyone, John A.G. here. Welcome back to my channel, Aurex. If you haven't yet, subscribe to my channel. In this channel, you will find the real information, real market updates that everyone cannot tell you. So please subscribe to this channel and love you all of my subscribers for your support. And please watch this video till the very end because YouTube will not push my videos to more people. What I am about to share with you today is not fear-mongering. It is not internet speculation, and it is certainly not a conspiracy theory. It is the cold, mathematical, unvarnished reality of the world we just woke up to this week in May of 2026. We are standing at the absolute edge of a financial precipice that humanity has not seen since the Roaring '20s came crashing down into the Great Depression. The ground beneath our feet, the very foundation of the global economy, is fracturing, and the tremors are about to reach your front door. Listen to me very carefully, because if you blink, you will miss the single largest wealth transfer in human history. This week, history has been rewritten, not in ink, but in the frantic, terrified movement of institutional capital. A global bank run has begun, and its catalyst is a seismic, earth-shattering event happening thousands of miles away from Wall Street. Saudi Arabia has officially, definitively, and publicly exited the petrodollar system. To understand the sheer, terrifying magnitude of what is happening this week, we have to travel back in time. We have to peel back the curtain and look at the oxygen that has kept the American economy, and by extension, the entire Western world, breathing for the last half-century. We have to look at the greatest financial magic trick ever pulled on the global population. In August of 1971, President Richard Nixon went on national television and severed the United States dollar's final tie to physical gold. Before that moment, the dollar was essentially a receipt for gold held in a vault. But after that broadcast, the greenback was floating on nothing but the promise of the U.S. government and the strength of its military. The global markets panicked. Inflation roared to life. The world realized that the anchor of the global financial system had just been cut loose. But then, in 1974, a masterstroke of geopolitical survival was forged. In the wake of the devastating 1973 oil crisis, the United States, led by Henry Kissinger, struck an informal yet unbreakable deal with Saudi Arabia. The terms of this arrangement were brilliantly simple, yet they dictated the course of human history for the next 50 years. The United States would provide unyielding military protection, advanced weapons, and absolute security guarantees to the House of Saud. In exchange, Saudi Arabia agreed to do one monumental thing: price all of its global oil exports exclusively in United States dollars. Furthermore, they would take those surplus dollars, the petrodollars, and recycle them back into the American economy by purchasing U.S. Treasury bonds. Think about the profound implications of this arrangement. Every single nation on Earth, whether they were an ally or a sworn enemy of the United States, needed crude oil to survive. They needed oil to heat their citizens' homes, to run their industrial factories, and to fuel their militaries. And to buy that black gold, they were forced to acquire green paper. Suddenly, an artificial, insatiable, permanent global demand for U.S. dollars was created out of thin air. This allowed the United States to do something no other empire in human history had ever achieved. It allowed America to literally export its inflation to the rest of the world. It allowed the U.S. government to run massive, unprecedented, multi-trillion-dollar deficits, to build a military-industrial complex of unimaginable scale, and to provide its citizens with a standard of living built entirely on cheap borrowing. The dollar was no longer just a currency, it was a geopolitical weapon. It was the absolute gravity of the modern world. If you wanted energy, you had to play by America's financial rules. We lived our entire lives under this illusion of permanence. We believed our money was safe in the bank because we believed the dollar was invincible. We thought the system was a force of nature, like the sunrise. But history, if you study it closely, teaches us a cruel and inevitable lesson. No empire lasts forever, and no financial manipulation can outrun mathematics indefinitely. The decay of this system did not happen overnight. It was a slow rot that began accelerating years ago. It began when the West started weaponizing the SWIFT payment system, freezing the sovereign reserves of foreign nations. The rest of the world watched that happen and realized that keeping their wealth in dollars was no longer a safe haven. It was a massive liability. Then, in June of 2024, the original 50-year informal petrodollar agreement quietly expired. Did you see it on the nightly news? Did the mainstream media break into their scheduled programming to warn you? No. They barely whispered a word about it. They told us it was a non-event. Financial analysts went on television and confidently declared that the inertia of the dollar was too strong to break, that there was no alternative, and that the American hegemony would march on uninterrupted. But look at the reality of the world today. Look at the data flashing across the terminals right now. The ongoing conflict in the Middle East has morphed into an absolute nightmare scenario for global supply chains. The Strait of Hormuz, the vital maritime choke point through which 1/5 of the globe's daily fuel supply passes, is effectively closed due to the devastating, escalating regional war. We are watching a systemic collapse of the regional economic model in real time. Brent crude has surged past $120 a barrel, and the insurance premiums on shipping are astronomical. And right in the dead center of this perfect storm sits the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia. This week, the fiscal data was released, and the reality is staggering. Saudi Arabia just posted a budget deficit of $33.5 billion for the first quarter of the year. Their oil revenues have plummeted, not because they lack oil, but because the tankers cannot safely navigate the strait. They are bleeding sovereign capital at an alarming rate. This is a nation desperately trying to pivot its entire national economy toward Vision 2030, attempting to build futuristic megacities and diversify away from fossil fuels. But suddenly, their primary revenue stream is choked off. When a sovereign nation's back is pushed against the wall, when their very survival is on the line, they abandon loyalties that no longer serve them. Facing acute, undeniable financial pressure, Saudi Arabia has fully and completely embraced the multipolar world. They are no longer just exploring alternatives in closed-door meetings. They are executing them on the open market. The petrodollar system is completely, irreversibly dead. Saudi Arabia is now actively selling its oil outside the dollar system. They are settling massive energy trades in Chinese yuan through the mBridge digital currency platform. They are finalizing contracts in Indian rupees. Most importantly, they are repatriating and hoarding physical gold at an unprecedented historic rate. For 50 years, the United States looked at the globe and dictated, if you want energy, you must use our money. Today, the world's largest energy producer has looked back and said, no, we will take whatever currency holds actual, tangible value. But what happens next is the part they are actively trying to hide from you. Because this geopolitical shift is what triggers the collapse of your local bank. When you hear the phrase bank run, what image immediately comes to your mind? Do you picture the grainy black and white photographs of the 1930s? Crowds of desperate men in fedoras and wool coats banging their fists against the locked, heavy oak doors of a local community bank, demanding their physical cash? Erase that image from your mind completely. That is not how a financial contagion spreads in 2026. A modern bank run is entirely silent. It does not happen on the streets. It happens in the fiber optic cables running deep beneath the Atlantic Ocean. It happens in the server farms and data centers of Wall Street. It happens right now on the 6-inch glowing screen you are holding in the palm of your hand. A modern bank run is millions of people, algorithms, and institutions swiping a finger to move their wealth out of a failing system in milliseconds. Here is the exact, unvarnished, mechanical breakdown of how the death of the petrodollar directly triggers the insolvency of the institution where you deposit your paycheck. As Saudi Arabia and the broader, expanding BRICS Plus coalition stop hoarding US dollars to facilitate their oil trade, the massive, structural global demand for US Treasury bonds simply evaporates. Remember, for 5 decades, those recycled petrodollars were the primary buyer of American debt. Now, that guaranteed buyer has walked away from the table. When there are no buyers for US government debt, the interest rates, the yields, on those bonds must violently skyrocket to attract any remaining capital. It is basic supply and demand. And here is the fatal flaw in the system. Bond yields and bond prices move in opposite directions. When yields skyrocket, the value of all the existing bonds plummets into the abyss. Now, look at your bank. Look at the regional commercial bank down the street, the place where you keep your life savings, your business operating account, your children's college fund. What do you think they did with your hard-earned, deposited money? They didn't put stacks of $100 bills in a steel vault. Under the fractional reserve system, they took your cash and they bought U.S. Treasury bonds, operating under the assumption that American debt was the single safest, most risk-free asset on planet Earth. But suddenly, because of a geopolitical tectonic shift thousands of miles away in the Persian Gulf, those bonds are severely underwater. The banks are sitting on hundreds of billions, perhaps trillions, of dollars in unrealized losses. Their collateral has evaporated. Mathematically speaking, they are fundamentally insolvent. The smart money saw this coming months ago. Institutional investors, massive hedge funds, and foreign central banks are quietly, efficiently, and ruthlessly pulling their capital out of the Western commercial banking system. They are dumping dollar-denominated paper assets. They are securing physical gold, industrial silver, vital commodities, and utilizing decentralized blockchain networks. They are fleeing a burning building, and they are intentionally making sure they do not pull the fire alarm on their way out. As this massive institutional liquidity drains from the system, the interbank lending market freezes completely. Banks stop trusting each other. They refuse to lend overnight capital because they do not know which of their competitors is secretly bankrupt. The entire plumbing of the financial system clogs, and then the panic trickles down to the retail level, to you and me. It starts as a simple rumor on a social media platform. A delayed wire transfer that should have taken hours takes days. A popular banking app suddenly goes down for, quote, routine, unscheduled maintenance on a Friday afternoon and simply never comes back online. Corporate payrolls fail to clear. Before you know it, millions of ordinary, hardworking people are frantically trying to log in, desperately swiping at their screens to move their money to safety, only to find that the liquidity is already gone. The digital doors are locked. The bank run has begun. It is happening right now in the shadows, but very soon, the terrifying reality of it will step fully into the light. It is entirely too easy to get lost in the macroeconomic jargon. It is easy for talking heads on financial networks to debate yields, sovereign debt limits, and geopolitical multipolarity as if they are abstract concepts in a textbook. But at Aurex, we deal in the brutal truth of human reality. Because the numbers flashing red on a trading screen always, without fail, translate into profound human suffering on Main Street. Let me break down exactly what the end of this fiat experiment means for you, your family, your community, and your future. Imagine the retiree who spent 40 years working on a factory floor or behind a desk. They did everything they were supposed to do. They followed the rules. They paid their taxes. They diligently saved a portion of every single paycheck, and they built a modest pension or 401k to see them through their twilight years. They believed the social contract. They believed that their government would protect the purchasing power of that money. But as the dollar loses its global reserve status, as the petrodollar recycling loop permanently shatters, the United States government can no longer finance its multi-trillion-dollar deficits by selling debt to foreign nations. To prevent an immediate catastrophic default, the Federal Reserve will have only one card left to play. They will be forced to print trillions of new dollars to buy their own government's debt. They will monetize the deficit. It is the ultimate financial Ouroboros, a snake eating its own tail. The immediate result of this? Hyperinflationary pressure on every single imported good you rely on. That retiree will walk into the grocery store next month and find that the price of basic human sustenance, a loaf of bread, a gallon of milk, a pound of meat, has doubled and then doubled again. Their fixed pension will remain exactly the same on paper, but its real-world purchasing power will evaporate like a drop of water on a hot stove. They will be robbed of their dignity and their security in their final years, not by a masked thief in an alleyway, but by men in expensive suits, central bankers and politicians who quietly printed away the value of a lifetime of labor. Think about the young entrepreneur who poured their life savings, their sweat, and their tears into opening a small business. When the commercial banks face a massive liquidity crisis, the very first thing they do is ruthlessly choke off credit to the middle class. Lines of credit will be instantly frozen. Small business loans will be outright denied, regardless of credit score. The lifeblood of the local economy will stop flowing. Main Street businesses will board up their windows, not because they lacked a good product or a strong work ethic, but because the financial plumbing of the entire world collapsed out from under them. Think of the young couple who saved for years for a down payment on a home, suddenly finding that 30-year mortgages are virtually unobtainable because no institution wants to hold long-term debt in a rapidly depreciating currency. Think of the immense psychological toll this takes on a society. We are creatures of habit, of routine, and of assumed security. For generations, we have equated a bank building with absolute safety. To wake up one morning and realize that the institution holding your entire net worth is essentially a hollow shell is a trauma that shatters a society's foundational trust. When trust in the medium of exchange dies, the social contract tears violently apart. People become desperate, and desperate people do unpredictable things. We are not just talking about a market correction, we are talking about a fundamental, historic resetting of how human beings interact, trade, and survive. The true cost of a dying empire is always paid by the working class. Right now, as you watch this video, the central planners are scrambling in total panic. The International Monetary Fund, the central bank governors, the politicians, they are holding emergency meetings and trying desperately to project an aura of calm. They are issuing statements about resiliency and temporary market dislocations. They are publishing massive, convoluted reports warning of amplification risks and tighter financial conditions, using complex language to hide a very simple truth. They have lost control. They are trying to put a tiny bandage on a gaping arterial wound. The system cannot be fixed because the system itself is the core flaw. A fiat currency, backed by absolutely nothing but violence, coercion, and blind faith, always mathematically returns to its intrinsic value, zero. Every fiat currency in the history of human civilization has failed. The Petrodollar arrangement artificially extended the lifespan of the US dollar by a miraculous 50 years, but no mandate can defy the laws of economic gravity forever. Very soon, they will step up to the podiums and introduce central bank digital currencies, or CBDCs, as the ultimate savior. They will tell you that a programmable, trackable digital dollar will solve the banking crisis, eliminate fraud, and ensure your safety. Do not let them deceive you. A CBDC is just the exact same broken, inflationary, debt-based fiat money, but with a terrifying layer of total totalitarian surveillance built into its very source code. It allows them to dictate where you can spend, what you can buy, and when your money expires. It is the ultimate illusion of control disguised as a technological upgrade. So, where does this leave you and me? If the petrodollar is truly dead, if the global, silent bank run has already begun, and if the financial establishment is completely impotent to stop it, what exactly do we do? My friends, the very first thing we do is refuse to panic. Panic is a luxury we simply cannot afford in 2026. Panic is the visceral reaction of the uninformed and the unprepared. Panic freezes you. Instead of freezing, we must become the active architects of our own financial sovereignty. When the paper system catches fire, you must hold assets that cannot burn. For over 5,000 years of recorded human history, through the rise and fall of the Roman Empire, the collapse of the Ming Dynasty, the fading of the British Empire, and now the twilight of the American financial hegemony, one immutable truth has remained constant. Physical, tangible assets survive. Gold, silver, productive agricultural land. These are not merely investments to be traded on an app. They are financial lifeboats. They sit entirely outside the fragile counterparty risk of the banking system. They cannot be keystroked into existence by a desperate central bank. They cannot be frozen by a sanctioned list or wiped out by a power grid failure. As the latest geopolitical intelligence reports detailed just this week, gold has forcefully re-emerged as the ultimate neutral reserve asset of the planet. The BRICS nations know this intimately. Saudi Arabia knows this. And most tellingly, the central banks themselves know this. They have been buying and hoarding physical gold at record, historic paces for the last 3 years, all while looking you in the eye through the television and telling you that your paper money is perfectly fine. Do exactly what the central banks do, not what they say. But true preparation goes far beyond precious metals. It requires a fundamental shift in your worldview. It is about understanding that the era of blindly relying on massive centralized institutions to protect you is permanently over. It is about aggressively reducing your counterparty risk in every aspect of your life. The new rule of wealth is simple. If you do not physically hold it, you do not truly own it. This unyielding principle applies to your money, your food supply, your water, and your energy. We are entering a period of severe generational economic winter. The transition from a unipolar, dollar-dominated world to a fragmented, multipolar, asset-backed world will be brutal, highly volatile, and entirely unforgiving. Vast amounts of wealth will not be organically created in the next few years. It will simply be transferred. It will be transferred ruthlessly from those who held blind faith in paper illusions directly to those who had the foresight to hold tangible, physical reality. The financial elite want you to be afraid because fearful, desperate people are incredibly easy to control. But genuine knowledge completely eradicates fear. By understanding the historical mechanisms at play, by seeing the death of the petrodollar not as a sudden random tragedy, but as the mathematical, inevitable conclusion of a deeply flawed debt-based system, you instantly strip away their power over your mind and your future. You are awake. You are here, watching this right now. And that is the most critical first step you can take. My absolute commitment to you, my Aurex family, is that I will stay on this wall. I will aggressively sift through the mainstream noise, the government propaganda, and the institutional market manipulation to bring you the raw, unfiltered, actionable truth. As this global, silent bank run accelerates in the coming days and weeks, as the headlines become increasingly desperate and the markets become increasingly chaotic, remember this video. Remember that you were not caught off guard. Remember that you saw the storm clouds gathering before the rain began to fall. Please, if this message resonated with you, if you feel the truth in these words, share it immediately. Send it to your family, your friends, your colleagues, to anyone who will listen with an open mind. The platform algorithms will try to bury this truth, because an educated populace actively threatens the established financial order. We have to bypass them. We have to be the algorithm. We have to be the network of truth. Hit the like button, leave a comment down below right now on exactly how you are preparing your family for this massive paradigm shift, and make absolutely sure you are subscribed to Aurex with all notifications turned on. We are navigating the economic storm of a century, the likes of which none of us have ever seen, but we will navigate it together. I am John A.G., this is Aurex. Stay safe, stay incredibly vigilant, and I will see you in the next update.